Hey, happy Pride Adventures. It's JC Chase, and I want to talk about one of my favorite stories featuring LGBTQ characters, The Adventure Zone. The Adventure Zone is a live play tabletop roleplay podcast with the McElroys. It's three brothers and their dad playing Dungeons and Dragons and other role playing games, and they've created a really rich world with unique characters who are canonically LGBTQ plus or queer. By the way, I'm going to use the word queer a lot to mean LGBTQ plus people, but I do recognize that not everyone identifies with that word. I'm using it because I find it to be a nice, easy word to say when I'm talking about gender identity and sexual orientation. Also, I'm going to try not to drop any major plot spoilers for the Adventure Zone, but fair warning that there will be a few. Since the creators of the podcast are cisgender and straight, they wanted to make sure that they approached their queer characters thoughtfully. And while there were a few missteps along the way, they took feedback from their community and addressed their concerns respectfully. They also made sure that none of their character struggles are due specifically to the fact that they're queer. And this is important for a few reasons. One, it can be really messy to try to tell someone else's story, and without a lot of research and feedback from someone who actually lived those experiences, you're probably not going to get it right on your first draft. An argument could be had that a straight person shouldn't try to tackle writing about a queer character struggles with discrimination or coming out at all, and honestly, that's a way bigger discussion than we have time for, but I will say this. It's definitely not something to try to tackle in an improv setting without research and the ability to make revisions. Griffin and Justin address this specifically when talking about the characters Taco and Loop. Loop is a trans woman, and Taco is a gay man in a relationship with another man. They talk about the fact that these characters grew up with a lot of hardship, but specifically called out that their hardships had nothing to do with their gender or orientation. They weren't looking to create a fantasy world full of homophobia and transphobia, and they didn't want to speak for queer people about those experiences. The other reason I appreciate that they didn't center the character's struggle on queerness is because personally, I want to be seen as a person with hopes and dreams and struggles like anyone else. And as much as it's important for queer people to share their stories and struggles around coming out and discrimination, it's not all we are. And representation should reflect that. We deserve to see ourselves as the fully formed, complex humans that we are. Loop is trans, but she's also a badass, powerful wizard. She's attractive, smart, witty, hilarious, a showboat, and kind of a loudmouth. She's incredibly loyal to her brother and to her friends, and her relationship with her boyfriend is both steamy and adorable. She's more than just one thing, and that's awesome. Overall, I just think there's something powerful in being able to imagine a world where it's not really an issue. I love to imagine a world where you can grow up trans and gay and it's just a fact about who you are, like your hair color or your height. And I think we can move towards that future by normalizing queerness and representing queer people without exploiting our stories for cis and straight people's entertainment. One of the early missteps criticized by fans was the show using the bury your gays trope. If you're not familiar with that trope, basically it's the idea that there's one gay couple or one gay character and they end up dying tragically. And the reason it's a problem is because it's like the only representation that we get to have is then suddenly gone. We don't get to have the happy ending that everyone else has. And that happened in the show. One of the first same-sex couples in the show ended up having an unfortunate end to their arc. And when fans reached out to Griffin, he admitted that he wasn't aware of the trope, and he promised to do better next time. And without getting too spoilery, I will say, thanks to the fantasy setting, these characters ended up being fine, which I got the impression was actually the intention all along anyway. And while it was cool that the show was able to sort of retcon the bury your gays trope, what really made a difference was the fact that there were plenty of other queer couples in the story after that one. And that's really the best way to avoid those kinds of tropes or stereotypes. Make sure you have more than one queer character or relationship. And by the way, I mostly only talked about the first campaign known as that balance arc, but they're currently playing a new campaign with a different system, and it has more of an X-Files, Fringe, Monster of the Week vibe. And I'll admit that I'm a little behind on those episodes, but if I remember correctly, there is a non-binary character in the story who uses they-them pronouns, and I think that's cool. Anyway, I recommend The Adventure Zone to anyone who loves fantasy but feels a little underrepresented. And even if you're new to D&D or you're not that interested in it, I actually never played D&D before listening, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's funny, exciting, a lot of fun to listen to, and it's hella gay.
This contains minor spoilers. Special is a Netflix series created by Ryan O'Connell about being a gay man with cerebral palsy. What is cerebral palsy, or CP for short? Ryan explains it as cerebral palsy is a disability resulting from damage to the brain before, during, or shortly after birth, and outwardly manifests through muscular incoordination. The series follows the character Ryan Hayes as he gets hired as an intern by the media network Eggwalk. He sees the job as a new opportunity, but there's one problem. Ryan won't admit to having CP and hides it behind having been hit by a car 3 months prior. Suddenly, he's no longer the disabled guy with CP, he's just Ryan, who got hit by a car and has a very limp for life. However, the lie quickly catches up to him and he finds new ways of hiding it from the people he cares about. Each 50-minute episode covers a story about how hard it can be to be disabled or fit within the mainstream idea of beauty in social settings. An important topic that's discussed within the series is the blatant ableism within the queer community. Even the character Ryan plays is ableist towards other people with disabilities. In the first episode, he expresses the need to fit in as he doesn't feel like he's able-bodied enough to be a part of the mainstream world, and not disabled enough to be fully recognized. In another episode, he's disturbed by the idea of going on a date with a deaf guy. The queer community has a history of not being very welcoming unless you're a white cis gay man. Even pride can feel like it's being gatekept by the fact that a lot of people call it gay pride instead of queer pride. Being gay has been pretty normalized in our modern society, however, a lot of other identities still get swept under the rug. Examples of groups that still don't get the recognition they deserve is the bi and pansexual people, trans people, especially trans women and non-binary people, and also trans people who are straight. Not to mention all the other queer people with health problems, both physical and mental. A lot of these people don't feel welcome in the community and feel like they don't belong in Pride just because cis able-bodied gay men have taken the spotlight and refused to share it. I hope more queer people get to voice what it's like to be in a community that doesn't always support them. This way, outsiders and allies can recognize that we aren't perfect and it's fine to point out when someone within the queer community isn't being kind. It can also make more privileged queer people be more aware of their behavior. And of course, it gives those people who do recognize themselves in Ryan to just go, hey, that's me. That's neat. I'm not alone. And that's very important. Having a series like Special gives a voice to a demographic that haven't always been heard. It covers the failures and victories of a man who's trying to fit in to a world that isn't designed for him. The show is funny, has a lot of truth, and is easy to consume. Every character is relatable, and we get to see a lot of development, both negative and positive. I recommend it. It's good. And happy Pride.